Harold Thompson stood at the entrance of his upscale restaurant, La Moine Elegante, his silver hair meticulously combed, his tailored suit crisp and immaculate. The soft glow of crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden light across the dining room, where white tablecloths gleamed and delicate floral arrangements adorned each table. The faint strains of classical music floated through the air, blending with the clink of fine china and the murmur of refined conversation. La Moine Elegante wasn't just a restaurant. It was Harold's empire, a testament to his ambition and success in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. For years, he had cultivated its reputation as a haven for the elite, lawyers, politicians, celebrities, and business tycoons who sought privacy, luxury, and an unmatched dining experience. To Harold, every detail was critical in maintaining the restaurant's pristine image, from the polished silverware to the carefully curated clientele who walked through its doors. At 62, Harold carried himself with an air of authority, his sharp features and erect posture exuding confidence. His wealth was evident not only in his appearance, but in the way he moved through the world, calm and controlled, as if he owned every space he entered. Yet beneath this polished exterior lay a man with deeply ingrained prejudices, though he was careful never to reveal them outright. To those who knew him well, his subtle judgments about who belonged in his establishment were no secret. He prided himself on his ability to discern class, a quality he believed was tied to appearance, background, and behavior. In his mind, La Moine Elegante was a sanctuary for a certain type of person, and he was determined to keep it that way, quietly discouraging those he deemed unfit from returning. On this particular evening, as Harold surveyed the dining room, his eyes caught a couple approaching the entrance. They were impeccably dressed, the man in a tailored black suit, the woman in a striking red dress that flowed with effortless elegance. Their attire was flawless, sophisticated, and entirely suited to the restaurant's standards. But as they drew closer, Harold's smile faltered, a fleeting reaction that betrayed his thoughts. Marcus and Olivia Daniels, the couple now standing before him, were black. For a moment, Harold's carefully crafted composure wavered, though he quickly masked it with his usual polished courtesy. "Good evening," he said, his voice smooth and practiced. "Do you have a reservation with us tonight?" "Yes, we do," Marcus replied, his tone warm and confident. "It's under the name Daniels." Harold nodded, but his mind was already racing. Marcus, a tall, well-built man with rich mahogany skin and neatly cropped hair, carried himself with a quiet strength. Olivia, beside him, moved with grace, her dark curls framing a face radiant with warmth and intelligence. They were a striking pair, exuding sophistication, but to Harold, their race overshadowed everything else. He questioned whether they truly belonged in his restaurant, whether their presence aligned with the image he had so carefully crafted. He glanced at his maitre d', who stood a few steps behind, and gave a subtle nod. The maitre d' checked the reservation list and confirmed with a slight nod that the booking was legitimate. "Ah, yes, Mr. Daniels," Harold said, his voice betraying none of his inner turmoil. "Right this way, please." As he led Marcus and Olivia through the dining room, Harold noticed the glances from other patrons, wealthy, predominantly white diners accustomed to a certain atmosphere. A few raised eyebrows, others exchanged knowing looks. Harold understood their unspoken thoughts because they mirrored his own. What were Marcus and Olivia doing here? Their presence disrupted the carefully curated exclusivity of La Moine Elegante. He guided them to a table near the back, close to the kitchen doors, a spot he reserved for guests he considered less desirable. The placement was deliberate, a subtle signal that they didn't quite belong. "Here we are," Harold said, gesturing to the table with his usual politeness. "I hope you enjoy your evening with us." Marcus and Olivia exchanged a quick glance but said nothing, taking their seats with quiet dignity. Marcus pulled out a chair for Olivia before sitting down himself. Harold lingered for a moment, studying them. Their composure, their elegance, should have impressed him, but instead he saw only what he wanted to see. Two people who didn't fit his vision of his restaurant's clientele. "Thank you," Olivia said, her voice soft but firm. "We're looking forward to it." Harold nodded curtly and walked away, but his mind remained fixed on the couple. Their presence unsettled him, not just because of their race, but because of the confidence they exuded. He was accustomed to guests being intimidated by the restaurant's exclusivity, but Marcus and Olivia seemed entirely at ease, as if they belonged as much as anyone else. This defiance of his expectations stirred a deep unease within him. Back at the entrance, Harold pulled the maitre d' aside and whispered, "Keep an eye on them. Make sure everything is handled appropriately." The maitre d' nodded, understanding the unspoken implications of Harold's request. As the evening progressed, Harold found himself glancing at Marcus and Olivia's table more often than necessary, searching for any excuse to justify his discomfort. But the couple remained impeccable, speaking quietly to each other, occasionally consulting the menu, seemingly unaware of the scrutiny they were under. For Marcus and Olivia, this dinner was meant to be a celebration. It was their 10th wedding anniversary, a milestone they had eagerly anticipated. They had chosen La Moine Elegante not only for its reputation, but because they believed their success and hard work deserved to be celebrated in such a prestigious setting. They had read about the restaurant in high-end magazines, heard of its exclusivity, and saw it as a reward for their achievements, a place to relax and enjoy each other's company. But from the moment they stepped through the door, they sensed the tension in the air. They noticed Harold's strained smile, the way he led them to a less desirable table, the subtle undercurrent of hostility that seemed to follow them. They were no strangers to such treatment. Over the years, they had encountered subtle racism, in various forms, from dismissive glances to outright exclusion. Yet they had hoped tonight would be different, that they could simply enjoy their anniversary without the complications that often came with being black in predominantly white spaces. Olivia reached across the table to take Marcus's hand, her voice soft as she said, "It's a beautiful restaurant." Marcus nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "It is. Let's make the most of it." They both understood the situation, but refused to let it ruin their evening. They had long ago learned to navigate these moments, to rise above microaggressions and subtle slights. Tonight was about their love, their shared journey, and they were determined not to let Harold's prejudice overshadow that. As the evening wore on, Harold's disapproval became more overt. He instructed the waitstaff to delay Marcus and Olivia's food, while other tables received prompt service. The couple's appetizers arrived conspicuously late, and though they exchanged another glance, they remained composed, sipping their water and continuing their conversation. Harold had hoped the delay would unsettle them, perhaps provoke a complaint, but their calm demeanor only fueled his irritation. They were too poised, too unshakable, and it grated on him. After what seemed an eternity, a nervous waiter finally brought their appetizers, avoiding eye contact as he set the plates down. "Sorry for the delay," he mumbled. "No problem," Marcus replied with a polite smile. "Thank you." The waiter retreated quickly, eager to escape the tension. Harold watched from across the room, his frustration mounting. Their composure was a challenge to his authority, a silent rebuke of his unspoken rules. He needed to do something more direct, something to make it clear they weren't welcome. Leaning toward the maitre d', he whispered, "Check their reservation. Again. Make sure it's legitimate." The maitre d' hesitated, sensing the hostility in Harold's tone, but nodded and complied. When he returned, He confirmed the reservation was valid, leaving Harold with no easy excuse to confront them. Still, he wasn't ready to let it go. Straightening his suit jacket, he approached their table, his practiced smile in place. "Mr. Daniels, Mrs. Daniels," he began, his tone smooth but laced with condescension. "I trust you're enjoying your evening so far?" "We are. Thank you," Olivia replied, her voice calm and measured. "Good, good," Harold said, nodding. Slowly, "I wanted to ensure everything was to your satisfaction. You see, we pride ourselves on providing an exceptional dining experience here at La Moine Elegante, and I'd hate for anything to be out of place." The implication was clear, but Marcus and Olivia refused to take the bait. "Everything has been fine," Marcus said, his voice steady. "We appreciate your concern." Harold's smile tightened. Their composure was infuriating. "I couldn't help but notice," he continued, his tone sharper, "that your reservation seemed to cause some confusion earlier. It's rare that we encounter such unusual circumstances." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Unusual circumstances?" Harold nodded, his smile unwavering. "Yes, well, we don't often receive reservations from guests who are new to our establishment." Marcus and Olivia exchanged a glance, fully aware of what he was implying. "We made the reservation through the same process as anyone else," Marcus said evenly. "I'm sure it was no different from any other reservation you've received." Harold's irritation grew. They were too calm, too collected. He had expected a reaction, something to justify his actions, but they gave him nothing. "Of course," he said, his voice tightening. "I just wanted to make sure everything was in order. You understand? We have certain standards to maintain here." "We understand," Olivia replied, her tone cool but polite. "It's why we chose to celebrate our anniversary here." The mention of their anniversary caught Harold off guard, but he quickly recovered, his pride refusing to let him back down. "I'm glad to hear that," he said, straightening. "But I must say, I'm surprised you chose La Moine Elegante for such an occasion. It's not the sort of place one typically finds your type of clientele." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. It was the first time Harold had explicitly referenced their race, and he watched them closely, waiting for a crack in their composure. But Marcus and Olivia didn't flinch. Marcus leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. "Our type of clientele?" he repeated. "And what type would that be, Mr. Thompson?" Harold hesitated, sensing the trap, but he was too committed to retreat. "We cater to a very specific demographic here," he said carefully. "Our guests expect a certain atmosphere, a certain level of exclusivity. I'm not sure you quite understand the nature of our establishment." The insult was clear now, laid bare for all to hear. Marcus and Olivia exchanged another glance, a silent conversation passing between them. Then Marcus spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "I see. Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Thompson." Harold felt a flicker of unease but pressed on. "I'm afraid I must insist," he said, his voice growing colder. "I don't believe this is the right place for you. I think it would be best if you left." The words were a line crossed, and Harold knew it, but he stood firm, convinced he was protecting his restaurant's image. Marcus and Olivia sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle. Then slowly Marcus stood, Olivia following suit. They gathered their belongings with quiet dignity, refusing to give Harold the satisfaction of seeing them rattled. As they prepared to leave, Marcus turned to face Harold, his eyes calm but intense. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Thompson," he said. "We won't trouble you further, but remember this. People will always show you who they really are, one way or another." Olivia nodded, her gaze steady. "Have a good evening, she added, her voice polite but resolute. With that, they walked out, leaving Harold standing alone, his hands clenched at his sides. The other diners, who had watched the exchange with veiled interest, quickly returned to their meals, pretending nothing had happened. But the tension lingered, a silent reminder of what had transpired. Harold returned to his post, his expression composed, but inside, a small voice whispered that he had made a mistake. He ignored it, telling himself he had done what was necessary to protect his restaurant's image. Yet deep down, he knew this night would have consequences he couldn't yet foresee. Days passed, and Harold pushed the incident from his mind, convincing himself it was a minor disruption. La Moine Elegante continued to thrive, its tables filled with the city's elite, and Harold felt secure in his world. But fate had other plans. One morning, his assistant, Charles, entered his office with a sleek envelope marked "Urgent." Harold took it, noting the embossed paper and the return address of a prestigious law firm known for handling high-profile clients. Intrigued, he opened it to find a letter offering to buy his restaurant chain for a sum well above market value. The letter was signed by Andrew H. Mitchell Esq. of Mitchell, Stevens and Company, representing an anonymous investor. Harold read the letter twice, a slow smile spreading across his face. The prospect of a lucrative sale was tempting, though. He had no immediate plans to retire. He assumed the investor was a competitor or a wealthy entrepreneur looking to enter the fine dining market. Eager to explore the opportunity, he arranged a meeting with the law firm for the next day, his mind buzzing with possibilities. A deal like this could secure his future, allowing him to travel, invest, or start anew. The thought was intoxicating. The following day, Harold arrived at the law firm's sleek office in the city's financial district. The lobby, with its glass walls and polished stone, exuded wealth and power. He was escorted to a spacious conference room with floor-to-ceiling, windows offering a panoramic view of the skyline. As he waited, Harold imagined the life that awaited him after the sale. A villa in France, a penthouse in New York, endless possibilities. The door opened and he turned, expecting to see a senior partner or the mysterious investor. Instead, he froze. Standing in the doorway, impeccably dressed in tailored business attire, were Marcus and Olivia Daniels. Harold's mind reeled. These were the last people he expected to see, the same couple he had dismissed and humiliated just days ago. Yet, here they were, exuding quiet confidence. "Mr. Thompson," Marcus said, his voice smooth and professional. "Thank you for coming. We appreciate you taking the time to meet with us." Harold blinked, struggling to maintain his composure. "Mr. Daniels, Mrs. Daniels, I wasn't expecting—" "Please, have a seat," Olivia said, her tone polite but firm. "We have much to discuss." Still in shock, Harold sat mechanically, as Marcus and Olivia took seats across from him. A team of lawyers and financial advisors entered, carrying briefcases and folders, reinforcing the couple's authority. Marcus broke the silence. "Mr. Thompson, I'm sure you're wondering why we're here. Allow me to explain. My wife and I are entrepreneurs. We've built a significant portfolio in the hospitality industry, including several high-end restaurants. When we came to La Moine Elegante, it wasn't just for our anniversary. We were evaluating your restaurant as a potential acquisition." Harold felt the floor drop out from under him. They had been evaluating him. The realization hit like a physical blow. Marcus continued, "After our experience, we reviewed our options. We've decided that La Moine Elegante and your other establishments would be a valuable addition to our portfolio. That's why we're here, to make you an offer." "An offer?" Harold echoed, his voice tight. "Yes," Olivia said, her tone businesslike. We're prepared to purchase your entire restaurant chain for a price well above market value. We believe this will be beneficial for both parties." Harold's mind raced. Why would they want to buy his restaurants after how he had treated them? There had to be a catch. Seeing his confusion, Marcus clarified, "We're offering a generous price because we believe in the potential of these establishments. However, there are conditions." "Conditions?" Harold asked, his voice wary. "Yes," Marcus said, leaning back. "First, the sale must be completed immediately. We don't want this to drag out. We have the resources to finalize quickly, and we expect the same from you." Harold nodded slowly. It was unusual but not unheard of. "What else?" "The second condition," Olivia said, her gaze locking onto his, "is that you leave quietly. Once the sale is complete, you step away entirely. No public statements, no interviews, no lingering involvement. You take your profit and move on." Harold's eyes narrowed. This was more troubling. La Moine Elegante was his life's work, his legacy. Walking away without acknowledgement felt like erasure. "And finally," Marcus added, his voice hardening, "you agree never to open a similar establishment again. If you do, we'll consider it a breach of contract and pursue legal action." Harold's composure cracked. This wasn't a business deal, it was a takeover, a deliberate stripping of his identity. "Why these conditions?" he asked, his voice trembling with suppressed anger. "Why do you want me out so completely?" Marcus and Olivia exchanged a glance. "Let's just say we believe in doing business with integrity, Mr. Thompson," Marcus said. "The way you treated us showed us who you are, and we have no interest in being associated with that attitude. We're offering you a profitable way out, but it comes with the understanding that you step aside completely." Harold's indignation flared. How dare they judge him? But as he looked at them, he realized they held all the power. "And if I refuse?" he asked, his voice tight. Olivia's expression didn't waver. "If you refuse, we'll walk away, and we'll make sure everyone knows why. Your investors, your clients, the media. Trust me, Mr. Thompson, that kind of story spreads fast." Harold's stomach churned. A scandal would ruin him, his reputation, his business, his future. He was trapped, cornered by his own actions. For a long moment he sat in silence, weighing his options. He could negotiate, but it would be futile. Marcus and Olivia were prepared, and they weren't backing down. Finally, with bitter resignation, he nodded. "Fine. I'll agree to your terms." A small, satisfied smile crossed Marcus's lips. "Excellent. Our lawyers will finalize the paperwork." Olivia nodded, her expression softening slightly. "You're making the right decision, Mr. Thompson." Harold didn't respond, his anger and bitterness threatening to spill over. The meeting continued, with lawyers outlining the contract's details. Harold listened in a daze, the reality of his defeat sinking in. By the time the meeting ended, the deal was all but sealed. Marcus and Olivia stood to leave, Marcus extending his hand. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Thompson. We'll ensure the transition is smooth." Harold shook his hand stiffly. "I'm sure you will," he said, his voice hollow. Olivia gave a polite nod. "Goodbye, Mr. Thompson. We wish you the best." As they left, Harold remained seated, staring at the table. Anger, resentment, and regret churned within him, but beneath it all was fear. For the first time, he felt powerless. His actions had led to this moment, and there was no one to blame but himself. In the weeks that followed, Harold tried to adjust to his new reality. The sale of La Moine Elegante became the talk of the town, the story of his confrontation with Marcus and Olivia spreading like wildfire. The local newspaper ran a headline, Restaurateur sells business to couple he once spurned. The article detailed how Harold's racism had led to his downfall, painting him as a cautionary tale. His former clients distanced themselves. Invitations dried up, and his other business ventures suffered as investors pulled out, wary of his tainted reputation. Harold became a pariah, shunned by the community he once dominated. Former employees spoke out about his subtle racism, revealing a pattern of discriminatory behavior. His attempts to downplay the incident fell flat. The damage was done. Isolated and alone, Harold retreated to a small apartment on the city's outskirts, far from the upscale world he had once ruled. The wealth from the sale offered little comfort. It was a hollow victory, a reminder of what he had lost. Meanwhile, La Moine Elegante flourished under Marcus and Olivia's leadership. They rebranded the restaurant, shedding its elitist image and creating a warm, inclusive atmosphere. The decor was refreshed, the menu diversified, and the clientele became more varied, reflecting the city's diversity. Revenue soared, and the restaurant earned glowing reviews, becoming a symbol of positive change. For the community, it was proof that old prejudices could be overcome, that inclusivity could triumph over exclusion. Harold watched from afar, reading about the restaurant's success with a mix of bitterness and regret. He had always believed his wealth and status made him untouchable, but now he saw the truth. His pride and prejudice had been his undoing. In a moment of weakness, he decided to visit La Moine Elegante, hoping to reconnect with his past. He called to make a reservation, giving his name, but the hostess politely informed him there was no record of it. "I used to own the restaurant," he said, expecting recognition. "I understand, sir," the hostess replied gently, "but our reservation system is full. Perhaps another date?" The rejection stung. The restaurant he had built had no place for him now. As Harold sat in his modest apartment, the reality sank in. The world had moved on without him. Marcus and Olivia had turned La Moine Elegante into something greater than he ever could, a testament to inclusivity and respect. Harold was left with nothing but his regrets, a lone figure in a world that had passed him by. His downfall was complete, a bitter lesson in the consequences of pride and prejudice. The restaurant thrived, a symbol of change, while Harold faced the truth about himself, a truth he had learned too late.